Alright, what is up my Shadowverse soldiers, and welcome back to another Shadowverse Evolved video. Alright, last time we were doing the heal amulet breakdown for the deck, but today we're going to be doing Forcecraft. I'm so excited to talk about it because there's a huge thing that we need to talk about. And that is currently the elephant in the room. So yes, elephant is finally here. We are in set 4. I know this is a little late into getting into it, but let's go ahead and break down what this Forcecraft deck does as far as the elephant combo deck. Alright, so let's talk about the pros and cons for the Elephant Forcecraft deck. So the pros is we have Elephant. Elephant is a very good late game card with a very nice ability on Evo. It has versatility because it's Forcecraft. Sometimes Forcecraft can be really toolboxy, whatever you want to do in either the mid or early game. However you craft your deck, Forcecraft can really cater to that. And then we have the hand size. So Forcecraft is always going to have a pretty nice healthy hand size unless you're playing like a different version of it. But most of the time Forcecraft is going to have a nice healthy hand size. Alright, and on the other hand, we have cons for the deck. So the first con that we have is pretty expensive, and not in terms of price wise, but in terms of play points wise. So let's say if I want to go for my big boss monster, my game ending thing, I'm going to need 10 play points. So decks that are finishing before 10 play points, this is really counterintuitive to what you do. So you need to have the survivability. So that's where it comes into my next con for the combo. So I love combo. I love the uniqueness that it has for Forcecraft, and I love that all the decks have their uniqueness of skills and whatnot, but I feel like combo is just a little too much for what you want to do, especially going against certain decks. For like Hero Sword example, you know, to do combo 3, you know, you get the Crystallia Eve token, while on the other hand, Sword just needs to play a 3-drop and then evolve it, and then they have 2 bodies on the field. They may not be big, but they're bodies and they're swinging for a whole bunch really fast, so that's what the deck really does. But for Forcecraft combo, you do get the big Crystallia Eve token, but she can get removed in a snap and quick in a hurry just like that. And then it's also very draw dependent. So the one thing that you do not want to be doing is top decking, especially if you don't get your early amulets or anything like that that helps you really draw a whole bunch. So it really is draw dependent. You do have a nice hand size, but if you don't have what you need in your hand, then you're definitely just sitting there praying that you draw it from the top of your deck. And then there's numbers. So I guess combos and then numbers really does kind of go together, but in terms of what the elephant does. So let's say your opponent's at 10 life and you can't swing for 10, you can only swing for 9, which really hurts. But you know, if you're able to do a couple of different lines in play and to whittle them down in the right ways, a good player will know what to do. But numbers is definitely one of the things that you will have a problem with in the elephant deck. Alright, so let's talk about the elephant in the room. We have King Elephant, and if you don't know what this card does, it has Storm when it's played. He's a 6 cost. You can evolve him for 4, and when he comes into play, you select any number of cards on your field and you return them to your owner's hand, and then you give this card plus X plus X. X equals the number of cards in your hand. So, however many cards in your hand, that's how big King Elephant is going to be, and he's a Storm follower, so that makes it even better, so he can swing as soon as he's played. And then when we evolve him, he still has Storm, and then you give him another plus X, and X equals the number of cards in your hand again, and he's able to ignore Ward. Alright, so the first thing I'm going to say is if the Forcecraft player gets to 10 play points, then this is going to get really ugly. And second, if they go second, then 9 play points. But it's just going to get really ugly because he's going to have a double buff. He's going to be huge. He ignores Ward. But the one thing you have to worry about is if you swing with the King Elephant, make sure your opponent does not have 4 play points up, because they are not going to respect this card at all because it doesn't have aura. So there is a window for interaction, which I'm very happy about. It's not super broken, but if they get to that 10 play points and you've exhausted everything that you've done and you're running out of gas, and this King Elephant's dropped on the board and they have 7+ cards in their hand, it's not looking too good for you, buddy. Alright, so enough about the elephant right now. Let's talk about the newer cards that came out in set 4. So we have Ivy Spellbomb. It's kind of like Witch Bolt, but with a combo 3 of dealing 3 damage to the enemy leader, which is pretty nice. We have Fashionista, which is essentially a Sun Oracle Pascal for Forcecraft. That's pretty cool. But the one thing that really I don't like about the card is that it's combo 3. In some decks you can't really get to combo 3, especially if you're doing a whole bunch of things or just being responsive against certain decks. Hero Sword, I'm looking at you, because that's truly the elephant in the room. And then we have Sukuna. So Sukuna is definitely a goated card, especially if you're going to be doing some damage. It's a Storm follower, and if you have the combo 5, she's going to be a 5/5, which a 5/5 with Storm is absolutely good because hitting somebody for a quarter of their HP is just too good to pass up. Alright, so now I want to talk about the premier legendary for Forcecraft. So we have Cassiopeia. So when she comes into play, you select any number of enemy followers on the field and deal X damage divided between them. X equals the number of cards in your hand and EX area. Alright, so glory be all that Forestcraft finally got a board wipe in some sort of way, because they had Smart Falcon before, but it was only restricted to Uma followers, so it was really weird to get most of the damage that you wanted. But with Cassiopeia, all you need is cards in your hand and cards in your EX area. So you're really definitely winning when it comes in terms of that. Well, it's sad that you do lose out on damage when you play her because, you know, you're losing one card out of your hand, but, you know, honestly, the amount of cards that your opponent's going to have on turn 5, you shouldn't have a problem dealing that amount of damage to something, especially if you play like Fairy Circle or something, to put something into your EX area and fill it up quite nicely to get that extra damage in. So to sum it all up, I'm very excited for Forestcraft to finally have a board wipe, and I'm glad to see this card being played. I know this is definitely going to see some play in some competitive decks. Alright, so let's go ahead and figure out some things to consider for Forestcraft. So we do have our King Elephant, that's our main late game card that we're going to be doing, but we have some secondary options that we can use that can be pretty useful. So we have Silverbolt. It's not a bad card. Honestly, a one of it isn't bad in the deck because you're going to be drawing a whole bunch of cards and putting a whole bunch of cards back in your hand. If you're able to do both of the King Elephant and Silverbolt in one turn, which is never likely because both of those plays are expensive, which is what the con we were talking about. These plays are expensive. Like, look at these cards. We're looking at 7 and 6 right now. So these are cards you have to really commit to. So Silverbolt is definitely probably a go-to card because you draw a card after using the card, so you replace the card and then you just burn them for face. Or if you want to be different and run a different line of plays that you want to do in your deck, you can run Beating the Beast, have it around Fables, and it'd be pretty nice. Even though your hand size isn't going to be very big if you're running the full Fable package, why not just put in the Beating the Beast as just a big boss monster to go ahead and swing through Rush, or just have the aura to swing for face in next turn. Or if you play it through other means, that the other alternative way through Alice, then it's going to have Storm, and then it's going to be really big if you want to remove all those Fable counters off of it. Alright, so let's start talking about the tech for this deck. So one thing you don't want to go against is certain matchups, and these are some pretty good counters to certain matchups, you know, that being Execution and Erd. Surefire Bullet is just a good card to have just in case, you know, your opponent's using some like cheeky evolves like Alice, and you don't have the removal in your hand. Well, you have Surefire Bullet to fall back on. But getting into the other cards, not trailing off into Surefire Bullet too much, we have Erd. So Erd is good against the Egg matchup. Of course, you're going to need Cassiopeia with the new Andromeda to get rid of their field entirely and do some really good damage. But Erd is going to be pretty nice because they're going to be sitting on their Tin Soldier in the back line because that's really still the card that they're going to be focusing on with. So using Erd to disrupt their plays really does destroy a good Havencraft player because they're really going to be focusing on that Tin Soldier doing the damage. Now, as far as the Explosions and the Humpty Dumpties, well, good luck, Charlie, and pray that they don't get all of them because if they high roll that well, then I really don't know what to tell you. Now, on the other hand, we have Execution. So Israfil is definitely a go-to card. It's a big card. If you don't have the spot on removal in your hand, you don't want to commit all your playing points into doing that. But sometimes you leaving up 4 to see what your opponent does and using that quick execution on either their big boss monster or something that's just really scary that you don't want to use your play points on your turn to remove with Lilac or something like that, then you can just use execution on their turn, go ahead and get rid of it, and then keep moving forward into your turn. Alright, and then lastly we have Surefire Bullet. I couldn't think of anything else to put in the tech deck, but if you have any suggestions, let me know below because you guys are very good in correcting me on things, which also reminds me, thank you so much. I can't remember who the follower was, but they caught me in a lie. Thank you for correcting me on the amulet thing. I'm so used to Dragon Ball where they say, you know, can't beats can, and that's just the rule we've been following this whole entire time, and that's the rule that I've been following in Shadowverse. I know it's a different game, but I know when it says, hey, this can't do something, then, you know, anything else that's like, hey, you're able to do this, then, you know, can't beats can. You know what I mean. But in Shadowverse, it's very different. So thank you for correcting me. I see the errors in my raise. I read my cards. So forgive me, guys, if I don't read my cards. It's very hard. But getting back into Surefire Bullet, it's a 2-cost quick spell, so if your opponent's playing Alice or something like that, you can go ahead and get rid of it, or if they play Dragon Warrior, or things that just are 3-cost play points, and then you evolve them for 1, and they become 4/4s, and you don't want to use any of your other cards, like Execution, to get rid of them. You know, Surefire Bullet isn't that bad, especially since they're going to be 4/4s when they evolve. Alright, so let's talk about the good matchups and the bad matchups for the King Elephant Forestcraft deck. So for the good matchups, we have Runecraft, Abysscraft, and the Umacraft. So I don't think I included the Umacraft in Heal Haven. I didn't really know whether it was like a good matchup for the deck or not, but I will be including it in the future on to see if the decks are good against certain matchups. It's really hard with Uma slowly slipping out of the meta because of the restriction. If they unrestrict it, then Uma might definitely, seal its way back into the meta, but it's slowly slipping out since, they have the restriction of only having the 1-of Trial Initiation, the 1-of Econodictus, and that really does hurt for the deck. But the one thing I do want to go ahead and start talking about is the Rune deck. So if they're going for the big mill plays, it's going to take forever for them to get started. They are really slow, so if you get them in the early game and really disrupt them, and if they don't have the spells, which they're really dependent on, is drawing the spells. If they don't have the spells, then they're not really doing anything. So you can go ahead and swamp face for whatever you need to do. Whatever you have in your deck, go ahead and swing. Do not be afraid to swing at Runecraft, because I've learned, as playing Runecraft in the last couple of locals I've played, if you've watched any of the Sunday VODs, no one respects Rune. So once Stage of Kuon comes out, we'll finally have a strike back. But Runecraft, you do not have to respect or worry about them. In terms of Abyss, this is the control variant, which it takes a little time for them to set up. They're going to be milling with the new amulet card that they have. They're going to try their best to mill. So if you can get to your game plan a little earlier and get some good damage in, once that King Elephant comes out, you should be pretty dandy. But on the other hand, when you do get into that late game, you do have to worry about the Israfil, but that's why we run the execution to go ahead and get rid of his Israfil. It is in the cemetery again, so they can use Death's Breath on it again, but they're going to have to commit another turn on using Israfil. So if you have another execution, I'm praying for you. If not, then use your other terms of removal like Lilac and stuff like that to go ahead and spot removal that girl out of the field. Alright, and then we have Umacraft. So Umacraft is a little bit of a slow deck too, but they have really big numbers in terms of the followers that they have. But you have really good spot removal if you're using Lilac and stuff like that. I don't know why you wouldn't be running Lilac, because that's pretty good removal, but it is pretty expensive because she is a 3-cost play. But if you're playing against Umacraft and they have to wait a turn to swing with their Umas, that's pretty nice because you can just go ahead and remove them. And then if they don't have the removal for you, you can just keep using Lilac to keep spot removing any big Uma followers that you see. Alright, and now let's talk about the bad matchups for Forestcraft. So they come in the form of Swordcraft, Dragoncraft, and Havencraft. Alright, so the first deck we're going to be talking about is Swordcraft, and the Swordcraft variant we're talking about is obviously Hero Sword because it's the best version of Hero. Maybe the mid-tempo version you'll have a better time against it, but still, even their mid-range with the Leonidas is just too strong and there's no way. Especially with Cassiopeia, I know you have a board wipe, but Leonidas numbers, there's no way you're getting rid of that. So Hero Sword is just a little too fast for you. You're needing time to set up for King Elephant. You can go for the big play, but by turn 6, is when you want to play your King Elephant to put everything back into your hand and get that +X for however many cards are in your hand, or vice versa. You're already going to be low on life. So if you're able to finish them off through there, that's nice. But in the early game, they're going to be swinging at you a whole bunch, and if you don't have the response for that, then you're going to be in a very bad spot. Alright, so the next deck we're going to be talking about is Dragoncraft. So Dragoncraft is going to be ahead of you, especially if they optimally play. So let's say they get 2 Dragon Oracles in their opening hand, which is something that they want to do. Yes, they don't have a big hand size, but they do have big play points, so they can play whatever they need to. They can react. They can play their boss monsters before you, and you're going to be so behind. So you're going to have to really depend on wards and healing and, the amount of destruction you're able to try and attempt to do. But the dragon player is just going to conflag you, clear your board. But if you have something that's over 5 health, then there's a chance you might survive. But Dragon just has so many tools and kits to just go ahead and remove the field and just have so many play points before you can really get started. Alright, and then we have Havencraft. So Havencraft is probably the queen of removal. That's just how I see it. This deck is just born and made to just remove and stall. So it's nice that you can stall the game with King Elephant, but what really is the point of stalling if you can never get any damage through? You can get some damage through probably within the, turns, play points 1, 2, and 3, and 4. But if they've set up the bell ringers with the amulets, it's not going to be very pretty for you. So they are going to they're going to leave 4 play points up every time after turn 6 because they know they're going to Alcoi's Light your King Elephant. You can probably get them with Sakuna in some sort of way, but if they're counting the amount of times you're doing something in a turn and paying attention to your play points, then they're definitely going to sit there and wait for you to use like Sakuna or something, or whatever storm follower you're going to play. They're going to Alkaloid Slide it, heal, and then they're going to keep healing for the rest of the game, and you're going to sit there feeling sorry. Alright, so we finally got to the grade. So before we get into the raid, let's go ahead and look at a little bit of a basis of a deck line for Elephant Forest. Alright, so I want to go ahead and thank Shadowverse for go ahead and making this deck list in the JP version of it. I thank you so much for all the information that you give us for set 4. It definitely helps out here when we can just have a visual of what the deck can look like. This is just a basic sample of what it will look like. You know, sometimes you might change this card for maybe Ishan Flash, the Rose Gardener that is. You know, Ivy Spellbomb as a 3-of might not be a 3-of because, you know, it does deal 5, but, you know, the combo 3 might not be too practical. But, you know, cards like Harvest Festival where we need 3-of, where if you set it up nicely and have 3 of it and then go for King Elephant in a turn, you'll have a whole bunch of cards in your hand and you can finish the game pretty nicely. Alright, so if you're new to the channel or new to how we do things in a breakdown, we usually do decks by a grade, that being either S tier or F tier. Usually it's between S and A because that's most of the decks that we've done are just usually the topper decks or any of the newer decks, and they're pretty decent in what we're going to be seeing in competitive play. So that's usually the range that we've been doing, but leave a comment below if you want to do any of the lesser decks like Fallen Angel and stuff like that, and I'll definitely break those decks down in the future and definitely get to them. So let's go ahead and figure out this grade. Alright, so what we learned so far is that King Elephant has a very good late game. Its mid game could, you know, use a little tweaking. You can't run the basic stuff that we run in Shadowverse, especially if you're going to be going against like some sort of competitive builds like Egg Haven and Hero Sword. Those are usually the better decks. I think those are the top 2 decks right now in my opinion, but that's just my opinion. If you differ, let me know in the comments below. Guys, talk to me. I want to know what's going on inside of your heads when I make these things. But in terms of King Elephant, I believe it is very strong, especially when it comes to the late game, but in the early game is where you're going to lack a little bit, but you can definitely cater your deck to what you might be weak against or what you might be strong against, and then, you know, go for that. So in terms of that, we're going to give King Elephant a big ol' whopping A. It's not an S tier deck, it's not tier 0, there's only 2 decks I can think of that are S plus tier, because an S plus tier deck really just revolves around what they want to do. That being, you know, like Hero Sword, they just play their 1-drop, they play their 2-drop. It doesn't matter what deck they're going to go up against, they're going to play their 1-drop and 2-drop every time. It doesn't matter. But with decks like Forestcraft and King Elephant, you can't play your 1-drop and 2-drop sometimes because let's say you're going up against Runecraft. And I know this is a bit of an outlier pick, but let's say you go up against Runecraft. You're going to have to play differently than you've done in any other matchup. Or let's say you're up against Egg Haven. You're not dropping your cards like, you know, you're a mindless freak because the cards are going to get blown up. So you definitely have to, you know, maneuver differently between different decks. But if you play those matchups and you learn them pretty well and you become that pilot that is well tailored to whatever the meta is at the moment, then you'll definitely have some success. And that's where those grade A decks, they aren't really rogue, but they will get you somewhere if you line up nicely and you know. Alright, so I do not know what happened, guys. There was something that happened in post. I looked in editing and a video clip must have just gone away. That was the last part of the video. But I want to thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate all of you. Make sure you're safe in whatever you do tonight and safe whatever you do for the rest of the year. Oh, by the way, if you don't already know, we stream every Sunday. So I want to go ahead and let everybody know that we are streaming Shadowverse webcam locals every Sunday. Please feel free to join. I'm going to stream every time. And if we have 16 or more players, we're going to be doing top 4. So if you feel free and want to test your might, then come on Sunday and come play with us. And then if not, then, you know, feel free to join into the stream. And if you don't, then that's okay too. I still love you guys. Just make sure you're safe in whatever you do tonight and safe whatever you do for the rest of the year. I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.